tell me when you're ready.
Hit it.
All right. What brought you to art in your early life?
I think art has to do with kind of being lonely, and my dad was an educator. He was the principal of the grammar school I went to from 3rd grade to 6th grade, and my mom, she was with us until I was probably 3, 4, 5, but her and my dad divorced, and my grandmother really raised me because my dad was in Korea and then he was teaching. But when he started teaching, when he was a principal, every summer he would go to the University of Alabama to work on his master's, and I would go along, and he'd take me to the library and take me to the art stacks because he found out that I would behave. And he'd just get a desk somewhere, and I would pull down books about art and just look at the photos. And that's where I learned the Dewey Decimal System, because when you pull arts in the library, you're supposed to put them at the end of the table, and the librarians put them back, but Dad would come over and make sure I knew that where everything went back, because he didn't want to cause it. But in '69, I spent a summer at the University of Alabama just visiting friends, and I went back to the library, and the art stacks go up in the old library, and I found some of the art books, and I found the William Blake book that intrigued me back then, and I didn't even know I was looking at William Blake. So it was that gave me the spark to want to be an artist. But you know, I think art just comes from a kind of a longing, or something like that. I have a theory. It's called my blue-haired girl theory about art. How does it go? Art is born of a suffering child. There's all kinds of ways to suffer, but my little blue-haired girl is that theme.
Okay, good. And then what about a little bit about your early life that you wanted to share? Like, I also how you got from outside of Andalusia down here to Fort Walton. I was interested in that.
My dad died in an auto wreck when I was 12, the year I graduated from high school. I mean, grammar school, and went to high school. And I went to live with my mother and stepfather, and I'd really never known my mother because my grandmother really rose me up. I remember my grandmother she never spanked me. I never remember harsh words. I just remember seeing her work. She churned butter, scrubbed floors. She had 13 brothers and sisters, and they were all like older generation, like World War I, World War II. And then she had a 80-acre farm, and then I remember watching her cook in the kitchen in the morning, about 6, 10 people coming for breakfast. And we didn't have refrigeration, no running water. We had a well out front, outhouse out back, chickens, but she never really dominated me. I was just following her around, watching her work. But when I started living with my mother and stepfather, it was like I was reintroduced to my mother, and my mother was an alcoholic. So I would wake up in the morning and talk to sober mother, come home at night, talk to drunk mother. And my stepfather he was the vice president of a local production company, shirt manufacturing, and he was like ex-lieutenant colonel. And they would get in arguments, and I had to break them up. And when I was living with my dad and stepmother, before he died, we went to church almost every day, and you know, all Boy Scouts and Little League, but, you know, Dad helped with homework. I made all A's. But when I got no help at all at home with my mother and stepfather. And by the time I was 14, I said, what the hell, can't beat them, join them, and it was actually joining Timothy Leary's church that got me off the alcohol. But then I had to take meditation to get off the psychedelics.
So how long were you there, and where was that in Timothy Leary's church? Was that in what state?
We joined in Pensacola, but we did our own little chapter in Andalusia, Alabama. And they came around and got us. And we had an ounce that we'd gotten $15. It was beautiful. It was all manicured. And I saw the FBI come in and pull it out and look at it and stick it back. Then they went and started ripping our albums, stomping on them, and ripping our stuff off the wall. They took us outside and made us take our cars apart.
Where were you when this happened?
We had a friend that had a little place outside, and we took our stereos and all our albums over there, and it was like a communal hippie spot. But there were only really two of us interested in the you know, the religious aspect. There were only like five of us. The other three guys were just in it to giggle and have fun. Richard Albert formed the Neo-American Church based on the Native American Church.
Yeah.
They could go into their huts and take peyote.
Yeah.
So he just wanted the legal right for us to meet and take our sacraments, which was mescaline, psilocybin, and LSD. Well, he got arrested. After we joined the church, he got arrested in New York, taken to prison. He escaped. The Black Panthers broke him out, and he went to, I think, Angola or South America somewhere. And they got the list of all the members and came around and busted us. But we were so young, they turned us over to our local.
How old were you?
17 or 18.
Wow.
I first joined when LSD was legal, but they changed the laws. But Timothy Leary's partner, Richard Albert, went on to be Baba Ram Das, who Todd reads about. Todd's got a book about Ram Das, and he was one of my gurus. We got off the LSD by getting into meditation. Timothy Leary is an icon. I've been arrested 3 times. FBI, when they got our name from Timothy Leary. I got arrested working for the SDS in Mobile. They arrested us for peddling obscene literature. We had an underground newspaper.
That is a really cool thing. I remember you telling me that too.
We would buy these newspapers for $0.10 and sell them for $0.25 to make money, and it had the word fuck in it. So they arrested us for obscene literature. Each college would publish a student newspaper, and the big cities had even bigger newspapers like the Great Spuckleburn in Atlanta, the Oracle in Frisco, and they usually all had the same articles that were written by the SDS members, and it was all about what was going on. The hippie movement was peaceful. The radical movement was violent. We switched from the hippie peacefuls putting flowers to the SDS throwing rocks and spraying LSD in the cops' faces. That's what happened in the riot of 1968, the Democratic Convention. And in Mobile, they arrested us for peddling obscene literature. Before we had our fingerprints taken, the ACLU was there and bailed us out. And, they had it thrown out of court, but it's still on my FBI record. The next time I was arrested was by the Secret Service for making copies of counterfeit Federal Reserve notes, which is, counterfeiting. But
did you travel? Didn't you go to California at one point as well?
Yeah, when I dropped out of college, because I went to college instead of Vietnam, because if you went to college you had a deferment. And then they had the lottery in 70, I think, and if you got 1 through 100, you'd go to Vietnam. 200 to 300, you might go. 300 to 366, you're not going. My number was 365. I wouldn't go in. I dropped out of school. Came to Florida, started working in an oyster bar. I had my Communist Manifesto in one hand and Mao's Little Red Book in the other. And I was going to become a worker of the world, and 2 years later I was managing another restaurant for the guy, and I was reading about wealth creation and profit motives. But the work, the process when you're like in a restaurant, or it's the same as like you do an airbrush. It's all about, or if you're doing paintings, any kind of art, you've got to set up your materials, you know, get everything set up, and then you got to process. You got to do the art, and then you got to clean it up. Like, I've got brushes that I've had since I was 15 or 16 because I clean them every time. If you don't clean them, they'll get gumpy. If you have an airbrush business and you don't clean your machines the next day, you're not producing. And that's what happens a lot with artists. They don't clean up. They don't. The first art, remember that the art teacher you had that was real good, that taught them, that was what, she would come in and it was all about cleaning up the next class.
Right.
They don't learn that part of the artistic process, but I'm sure it happens in dance. Everything you prepare, execute, recover.
Now, I know you like music a lot too, and because music is also art.
Folk music is like primitive music. Blues is like primitive music. You know, hip hop and rap, and that's from the people. You don't have to go to school to learn it. It's part of your natural artistic process. Like, have you ever like gone to like clean your garage or something, and you didn't want to at first, but you started, and then you got to where you pulled everything out, and you really got into it. That was
it's like a meditation.
You were getting on fire with a creative process there. It can happen in any industry. I got my first oil set when I was 12. I still got the box. I still got some brushes from it. Ballet is classical. And the reason I started doing realistic things was because I started photographing the ballet and all these expressions.
He did awesome photos of the ballet.
Just all these expressions that everybody has. It's just, that's how I got into wanting to do something that's permanent and doing people.
Let's go to that question about your influence of Joseph Cornell. And when did you begin making boxes? Did you first see his art and then you were influenced by it? Or had you already thought of this idea and then expanded on that by bringing your own photographs into the boxes?
I was doing collage. I would take a oil painting or acrylic background and put photographs on it. And it was like, I hung some stuff like that I did on wood panels, and one of our students said, when I told him what I was doing, he goes, "You're cheating." I go, yeah, artists cheat. Anyway, but then a friend of mine gave me some slides from the Vatican, and I found out when you look at slides under a light box, like you examine them, you know, you have a light behind them, even with all the lights on, they stand out. So I started making light boxes like that one over there.
The framed one. Yeah, that one's incredible.
But I started, when I first started, when I first started, I was just doing collages. And then when I got the idea to do these boxes, but it was a hard, you know, I didn't have a system then. But now all these are, everything comes apart. It's got brass screws. You can get in there and repair everything. It's really heavy construction. I have a number of every piece of art I've done. The light boxes, I've given Roman numerals and call them illuminations, because in the Middle Ages they did illuminated manuscripts like this. And they call them illuminated manuscripts, so when I put the lights, I call them illuminations.
They're just beautiful,
But
Bob.
then people from work kept saying, "You good?" I mean, people not from work. People I knew said, "You gotta quit doing this religious stuff." So I started doing dance. The reason I marked everything is in the hope that someday I'll be a collectible person. And what art is nothing but wealth creation. Because this costs maybe $10 in materials. I'm using a night light, so that's $2 or $3. I'm gonna have $20 into this. I probably got about 30, 40 hours though.
So,
But if I sell it for $100, I've still made, not counting my time, I made some money. But if somebody else sells this for $200, they've created twice the money and wealth. If I become a collectible, Andy Warhol, his first soup can paintings he sold for $50 a piece. He bought them back, and now they're selling for millions a piece. That's wealth creation. It's like building cars and houses. So art is the way to create wealth, like Bitcoin.
So I remember your first pieces that you did more like a collage. How did you branch out of the collage into the Cornell style box with the light boxes?
Well, I saw I've gotten to where I really didn't want to do the lights and everything. I started doing, it was because of my photographs. I was taking photographs from work and trying to incorporate them into the boxes. And I had all these frames, and I started using those.
I remember you got that miter saw.
Yeah, and I made the box, and I made it on levels like I did these, just without the lights. And that, you don't really need. I thought of using little tiny LTDs, but that's a lot of work with the lights. But the stuff I'm doing now is more like I've given up on the borders. And I started just doing boxes without.
Yeah, this is the one I'm talking about. These were both two of your paintings that you've taken and
That's
added.
A photograph. This is a painting I did.
It's gorgeous, and so these are actual paintings that he did that he's incorporated, taken a picture of, and then put into his paintings. So really taking all those mediums and putting them together.
What I do is when I do a painting, I save the paint and just paint it on a board that I can go ahead and have ready to hang. And then once I get a background, I add photographs or whatever.
It's great. Great. So where'd you learn that?
I made it up.
You made that up? That was awesome.
Yeah, well, I stole it.
That's how art is. You have to steal some part of it, right?
Yeah. Well, I found it in an old blues book. I didn't steal the music. I probably stole the music, but I don't know where I stole the music from.
So you found it in an old blues book?
I found the words, some of the words, half the words, and I made the other half about Okaloosa and Blackwater up. But the moonshine was an old harp player, Blind Willie somebody.